Shalom, everyone. And title of for today's study, we're just going to pick it up where we left off in Matthew 13. So if you please just start there, open up there. Okay, we're going to jump into some parables. A few parables of Yahshua, and we're going to come across a couple of parallel accounts in both Mark and Luke. Mark, the fourth chapter of Mark, and the eighth chapter of Luke in these parables. And how far we're going to get is, well, we'll just have to see. I can't say I know how far we're going to get. So we'll just start from the top and go from there. On the same day, Matthew 13, chapter 1, verse 1. On the same day, Joshua went out of the house and sat by the sea. And great multitudes were gathered together to him. And he got into a boat and sat. And the whole multitude stood on the shore. So evidently, to get out a little distance from the crowd, he had to get into the boat. Evidently, the crowd was that large. And he spoke many things in parables, saying, Behold, a sower went out to sow. That is a farmer or someone who plants seeds. And as he sowed, some seed fell by the wayside, and the birds came and devoured them. And some fell on the stony places, where they did not have much earth. And they immediately sprang up because they had no depth of earth. But when the sun was up, they were scorched. And they had no root. And because they had no root, they withered away. And some fell amongst the thorns, and the thorns sprang up, and they choked them. But others fell on good ground, and yielded a crop, some 100-fold, some 60, and some 30. He who has ears, let him hear. Now he makes this little remark about he who has ears, let him hear. Now, I don't believe he means a physical, literal set of ears like we have on the side of our head. He doesn't mean that. But what he does mean is a capacity to listen, a capacity to hear. And not only just hear the words, but to actually listen and understand what's being said to you. That those who are inclined to actually listen to you. That those who are inclined to listen to the word of Yahweh. Actually listen. Verse 10. Actually, this phrase appears a few times in Scripture. A couple pages over. A couple pages over in Matthew 11. Matthew 11:15. We'll go there, please. And this is about John the Baptist. Joshua speaking of John. Verse 13 in Matthew 11. For all the prophets in the law prophesied until John. And if you are willing to receive it, he is Elijah who is to come. He who has ears, let him hear. So here's a clue on what this means, what he said in verse 14. If you are willing to receive it, he is Elijah who is ready to come. And he who has ears, let him hear. So it also implies not just what I said a moment ago, but what I said a moment ago or a minute ago, but if you're willing to receive it. See, this phrase seems to imply a will to receive. Let's try. Oh, what do I got written down here? I can't even read my own writing. Let us try Man, I can't even read my own handwriting. Let us try. Mark 4:9, Revelation 2:7. Should have known Mark, because that's the Mark 4:9. Same parable, but other seed fell on good ground and yielded a crop that sprang up and increased and produced some 30, some 60, some 100. And he said to them, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. Let's try Revelation 2:7, please. Same pattern. This is Revelation 2:7. This is in the letter to one of the churches, to the church in Ephesus. Verse 7, he who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. So we're given a fuller explanation here. To he who overcomes, I will give to eat from the tree of life, which is in the midst of the tree of the paradise of Yahweh. But verse 7, let's go. Can we repeat what we just said in verse 7? He who has an ear to hear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. So it doesn't mean it's not implied to just physical listening, to physical audible sounds like I'm making right now. No, it implies a will to receive and, if you will, a will to discern, a will to receive that information, and to actually listen to what the Spirit says, not necessarily just man. Let's try one more, please. Let us try Revelation. But there's other places, several places in which this phrase appears, and it seems to have the same implication, the same pattern all the way through. Any question or comment? Okay.
Yeah, Curtis.
Oh, David?
Yeah, I was going to wait in Matthew 13:6.
Okay, go ahead.
It says that when the sun was up, they were scorched because they had no root. They withered away. There's a parallel to that in James 1, verse 11 and 12.
James 1, 11 and 12, okay.
And there are many scriptures, talking about the sun and how it will actually burn, those that are wicked. It's going to burn, a third part of the earth. It's going to burn those that are tossed in a lake of fire,
There is an implication of those who are rejected, yes.
Yes, and so I think that parallel stands true through the entire scripture of how the Son will play a part in the judgment of the wicked.
Well, let's read James 1, 11 and 12. For no sooner has the sun risen with a burning heat than it withers the grass, and its flower falls, and the beautiful appearance perishes. So the rich man will also fade away in all his pursuits. Blessed is the man who endures temptation, for when he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life, for which Yahweh has promised those who love him. Any other question or comment? That was good. Thank you, David. Anybody else? Okay, back to Matthew 13. Picking up in verse 10. The disciples came and said, Master, why do you speak to us why do you speak to them in parables? And what's the most common explanation we hear today? Well, the most common explanation we hear today from many churches is, well, he was speaking to them on a level and about things which they understood back then, and because back then they were mostly a agricultural society, and they were all a bunch of city folks like most of us today. And that's a true statement. But is that really why he spoke to them in parables? Because, and he spoke to them to make his points easier to understand. But is that what he says in his own words? Let's look here. Because remember, whose word is he speaking? He's speaking the Father's word, correct? He's speaking what his Father taught him. He's not speaking his own words. And they asked him, why do you speak to them in parables? But Joshua says nothing of the kind. He answered and said to them, because it has been given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. So there's a mystery of heaven are hidden in these parables. Verse 12, whoever has, to him more will be given, and he will have abundance. But whoever does not have, even what he has, will be taken away from him. We find that lesson in the lesson of the parables, or lesson of the talents, don't we? About how a master or a landowner goes away on a trip. He gives so much money to each of his servants. To one he gave 5, another one he gave 2, another one he gave 1. And only one guy comes back to him and gives them back the money. He said, here, I took your money and I just hid it. But the others, they doubled it. They provided him an increase. It's a reflection on that parable. Verse 13. But in verse 12, he wasn't speaking to us on finances so much, was he? That was just an illustration, if you will. I'll put this on a level we might understand. To those who are given and shown the mystery of the kingdom of heaven. He spoke mostly on spiritual matters. Because I really get no pleasure from saying this. And it does nothing to make me feel better about myself. And there are a lot of people I know in this congregation who feel exactly the same way. We do know and have known people from our past when they learned the truth of the matter of this walk in this way. They learned the truth about the unclean meats. So they threw out the pork chops and the bacon. They learned the truth about the high days. So they quit keeping Easter and Christmas in place of the Sabbath, and they started keeping the Sabbath and the holy days. They quit keeping Sunday, and other matters. But then again, they stopped there. It was almost as if too many of them just stopped there. I'm not going to say the great multitude. I'm just saying I'll use the phrase too many. I'll say it that way. Too many just seem to stop there. And it's a sad thing, I believe, because what they were in a position to learn more, particularly the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. Let's see, continuing in Matthew, verse 13, therefore, verse 12, so whoever has, to him more will be more given, he will have abundance. But whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. Therefore I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. And in them the prophecy of Isaiah is fulfilled, which says, hearing you will hear and you will not understand. If you have any question or comment, get the usual, y'all get your hand up. Okay, we got our volunteer, Larry. Yes.
If we go back to chapter 5 of Matthew, in the Sermon on the Mount, one of the things that Yeshua pointed out was in verse 6. He says, "Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst," and this is the key point, not for food, but for righteousness, for they shall be filled. So a lot of these folks back then who may have heard Yeshua giving these parables and stuff, they may have been there for a nefarious reason. They may have been there to see if there was going to be a feeding of the crowd or seeing a miracle or something like that. but maybe they were not there for the true purpose of hungering in righteousness.
Mhm.
And so, we know that there were, through these parables given, there were those who came back afterwards. Yeshua did give them understanding of what he was speaking about. But the rest, they heard the parables, they thought it was good, and they left and went home.
Lisa?
And when Yeshua was talking about why he spoke in parables, in Ezekiel, there's an interesting scripture there in Ezekiel 17:1 and 2. And it says, "And the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, put forth a riddle, and speak a parable unto the house of Israel." So a parable is more than a nice story. It has meaning,
Mhm.
but you have to dig deeper.
Yeah, you have to
Kind of,
search it out.
Just like a riddle, you have to put those parts together to search it out.
Well, line on line, precept on precept, here a little, there a little. It is written, he said so many times. You're correct, Lisa. Anyone else? Here, back to verse 14. Hearing you will hear and not understand, and seeing you will not perceive. For the hearts of these people, this is why they don't perceive. For the hearts of these people have grown dull. Their ears are hard of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, lest they should understand with their hearts and turn, so that I should heal them. So why would an all-loving being, as I've heard the question so many times, I'm sure some of y'all have too. Well, why would an all-loving, all-caring being, why would a wonderful, loving God just make people unable to see and unable to hear? But it doesn't say that, does it? It doesn't say whose eyes he has closed and whose ears he has deafened. No, it said who shut their eyes? Thank you. Yes, you're correct, Tammy. They did. Raquel.
No, I was gonna when you talked about the parable of the sower, if you noticed, the soil of the people and the sower is Yah, right? He spread the seed to everybody,
Mm-hmm.
but each of the, it landed with the people and they responded differently. So it's, to your point, the people that shut their ears and didn't listen. And if you go to like John 8:47, he who is of Elohim hears Elohim's words. Therefore you do not hear because you are not of Elohim. Yeah.
Anyone else? That's very good. Anybody? That's correcting their own slumber and their own lack of interest of hearing the word. Not wanting to see what they wanted to see. They shut their own, the people in question shut their own eyes. And they could not receive the word. Yes, Tino.
And in the same sense too, the account that happened in Acts 2, when the Spirit was there in the place, and Peter got up and told him, when everybody was marveled about what was going on, he said, "No, this is what the prophet mentioned." It was the believers that were there. All those people were there and heard and saw what had happened, but the believers that were actually wanting to understand what was going on, it was them who was receiving exactly what the word was saying. And it's interesting because, just like Raquel pointed out, the seed is being sold to everybody. It's the believers that understand what try to understand what it is that Yahweh's word is saying to them, so they can do what Yahweh has told them. It's interesting that I think the account of Acts kind of plays along that same pattern.
And it is that pattern. It's not like that pattern. It is that pattern.
It is that pattern.
It is that pattern. Anyone else? Hold your place in Matthew 13. I want to read a very quick couple verses out of 2 Thessalonians. 2 Thessalonians 2. Bob, if you're listening today, you know exactly where I'm going. My good buddy Bob. No wonder it didn't look right. I'm in 1 Thessalonians. I knew that didn't look right. 2 Thessalonians. Second. Verse 10. And with all unrighteous deception amongst those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this reason, Yahweh will send them a strong delusion, that they should believe the lie. If they're not going, if they don't want to receive the truth, what will Yahweh give you instead?
Respect their choice.
Mm-hmm. In a matter, that's exactly like it, Rock. In a matter of speaking, He will respect your choice. That's exactly it. He will respect. Okay, I'm giving you this. You don't want it? Okay, I'll give you something else. Because these people loved the lies they heard. Is that alone will stop someone from hearing, and it will dull their ability to understand. It'll cause that little brain blockage up here up front. Anyone else?
Yeah, Curtis, could you?
Yes, David.
Could you read 1 Corinthians 2:6
1 Corinthians 2:6
and 7?
and 7.
Kind of ties nicely into
Mm-hmm.
those that listen to Yahweh's words and those that don't.
I think I got that. Yeah, I do, guys. But I'll read it. Which verses did you say again, David?
6 and 7.
Yeah, I do got that down. Let's see. However, we speak wisdom. 1 Corinthians 2, verses 6 and 7. However, we speak wisdom amongst those who are mature, not yet in the wisdom of this age, nor of the rulers of this age, who are coming to nothing. But we speak the wisdom of Yahweh in a mystery, the hidden wisdom which Yahweh has ordained before the ages for our glory, for which the rulers of this age knew, or for which none of the rulers of this age knew. For if they had known, they would not have crucified the Master of glory. And that still holds true today, because we have leaders in our land today and all over the world who do things that seemingly make no sense, that are contrary, things that are contrary not only to the interests of their own people, but to themselves as well. But they can't see that. They're blind to that. Very good, David. Anyone else? Okay, back to Matthew 13. So it was their own eye, back in verse 15. So it was their ears. It says their ears are hard hearing, unless their eyes they have closed. They stopped up their own ears. They stopped up their own eyes. For various reasons, for whatever reason, the word just had no place in them. There was no love of the truth. There was no hunger for thirst for righteousness. Verse 16. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For assuredly I say to you that many prophets and righteous men desired to hear what you see, and did not see it, and to hear what you hear, but they did not hear it. Staying here, hold your place in Matthew 13. Let's try Proverbs 20, verse 12, please. The hearing ear, and the seeing eye. Yahweh has made them both. Yahweh's created both the eyes that hear, the ear that hears, the eyes that see. And then, any thoughts or questions on that, perhaps? Yes, Tino.
Yeah, we know in the word it says too that that the faith doesn't come by sight; it comes by hearing the word of Yahweh. And if you think about what this eye is, so it's not the physical eye; it's the insight of what Yahweh is, His wisdom of what.
That is
He
correct,
gives
Tino.
To understand what He's trying to tell you through His word, but you have to be able to hear it with the ears that He's speaking of. The same way that Yahshua is pointing out in the parable, it's those proverbial ears of comprehension, of actually listening,
Mm-hmm.
of taking a hearkening, as some of the the text might read hearkening. It's that understanding from the inside. I think that's the eye he's speaking about.
That's because it is. Anyone else?
Hey, Curtis.
Yes, David.
This is just a little fun fact. In Matthew 13:17, Matthew refers to that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see those things which ye see. When you go to Luke 10:24, Luke gives a different description, but he's talking about the same group of people. He says, "For I tell you that many prophets and kings have desired to see these things." I find it funny that Luke uses the words kings because obviously when Yeshua comes, we will all be considered kings and priests.
That's correct.
So the righteous man at his coming will be the kings. Just a fun fact.
Very good. Anyone else? Let's try a short passage out of Hebrews 11, please. Let's pick it up in verse 8, please. A short reading about Abraham. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out of the place which he would receive as an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going. By faith, he dwelt in the land of promise, as if in a foreign country, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of that same promise. For he waited for the city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is Yahweh. So what city would that be? That'd be the New Jerusalem that we read about in Isaiah 65 and 66. We read about that in Revelation 22 as well. By faith, Sarah herself also received strength to conceive seed, and she bore a child when she was well past the age, because she judged him faithful who had promised. Therefore, as one man, and him stood as good as dead, were born as many as the stars of the multitude in the sky and multitude, innumerable as the sand which is by the seashore. All of these died in faith, not having received the promises, having seen them from afar off. Funny, they could see them from afar off. They were assured of them and embraced them and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For those who say such things declare plainly that they seek a homeland. And truly, if they had called, if they had called to mind that country from which they had come out, they would have had an opportunity to return. But now they desire a better, that is, a heavenly country. Therefore Yahweh is not ashamed to be called their Elohim, for he has prepared a city for them. So all the righteous of the past, Abraham, the entire chapter of here of Hebrews 11 could cover that very well. I thought the short reading from out of Abraham would suffice. Anybody else have any other question or comment? We can back up and backtrack if we need to. Yes, Lisa.
Ago we were reading in 1 Corinthians chapter 2,
Go ahead.
and in verse 10 and 11 it says, but Elohim has revealed them to us through his Spirit, for the Spirit searches all matters, even the depths of Elohim. For who among men knows the thoughts of a man except the spirit of the man that is in him? So also the thoughts of Elohim no one has known except the Spirit of Elohim. And we have received not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit that is from Elohim, in order to know what Elohim has favorably given us. So we can read and we can understand the words that are on the page, but the true understanding, the spiritual eyesight, the spiritual hearing, that comes from Yahweh.
Raquel?
Yeah, I'll just add to her what you said in Revelations 5:6. You know, when they were talking about in between the throne, they were describing the Lamb standing.
Yes.
He had 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of Yah sent out into all of the earth. That's Yeshua.
Anyone else? And that's a good image of what they were seeking. Yes.
I find it interesting that at the very beginning, this whole thing about eyes and seeing, that the adversary used that to tempt the woman, right? When Genesis 3:5, for Elohim knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like Elohim, knowing good and evil. From the very beginning, there's this, I guess, desire to know Yah or wisdom, and the adversary just kind of used that against,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Eve and Adam.
Hey, because who's the one who originally twists up the words of Paul that others may not understand? Well, would he not be doing the same thing? If he's doing the same thing with Yahweh's words, then he'll do it. He'll do it with what's written here. He'll make it difficult to understand. He can use men who will twist Paul's words. That's what he will do. Anyone else? Okay, so these guys still didn't understand the parable. He tells them why he used the parables, because like we're told in Proverbs 25, verse 2, it's to the glory of Yahweh to conceal the matter, and the honor of the king, the glory of the king to search it out, or the honor of a king to search it out. That's Proverbs 25, 2. And that's the heart of the matter, and all, excuse me, what we've been discussing here. But everything said at that point's been pertinent. And Joshua, continuing on in verse 18, Joshua perceives that these disciples still do not understand the parable. He says, okay, therefore now hear the parable of the sower. Now he didn't mean hear it just like they did with their physical ears a few minutes ago. No, he means, okay, no, listen, he says, no, I want you to understand it. I want you to hear it in that regard. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, then the wicked one comes away and snatches away what was sown in his heart. This is the seed that fell by the wayside. So there's a lot of symbolism in these parables as well. Because back in the parable, we'll back up. back to verse 4, you see where it says the farmer sowed, and some of the seed fell by the wayside, and the birds came and devoured them. So the birds would be Satan and his minions. The seed is the word, the good seed, the word. And people sometimes they understand it, and they understand it, or they don't. So the birds come and these birds take away because how is it taken away? Because they're not guarding it, they're not protecting it. Remember, we're told to guard this word, keep this word, preserve it, treasure it, keep it, lest Satan come take it away. That's a paraphrase out of James. These people are not doing that. At least the people we read of here in verse 19, chapter 20. Verse 20. This is he who received the seed by the way, but verse 20. But he who received the seed on the stony places, this is he who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Okay, they receive it with gladness. Well, let's back up a little bit to verse 5, remaining in Matthew 13. Some fell on stony places where they did not have much earth, and they immediately sprang up because they had no depths of earth. So seed, if you leave it in some type of proper condition, it'll spring up quick, won't it? That's how, first, because when you take a small sample of seed, this is how someone determines whether or not it's good seed or not. You don't bury it, but you just kind of leave it to where it'll, in a moist environment, an environment where it'll have some opportunity to spring up. Now, you're not expecting the seed to grow into a full crop, but it's a little test you can do to see if the seed is any good, right? But he who receives the seed on stony places, this is he who sees the word and meet it with joy. So when it springs up, when the plant springs up, that's receiving it with joy. But it has no root, so the plant physically it has no real root because it'll initially spring up very quickly, but it won't last. It won't persevere. Why? Because there's no root. It has to have root to persevere. It must have root and must have soil. But yet he has no root on of himself, but endures only a short while. If he has no root, now what's significant about having no root? It's a foundation. Very good, Tino. Because isn't that how a plant receives all the water and the nutrition it needs from the soil through the root system? It also helps it maintain rooted or planted firmly in the ground. The better the roots, the stronger the roots, the more secure it is in the ground and the earth, correct? We're keeping in verse 20. Remember, so these have no real roots. For when tribulation or persecution arise because of the word, immediately he stumbles. So the plant that's fell in the stony places, it'll spring up quickly, but it won't last. It has no root in of itself. It has no means to continue to grow. Verse 22, now he who received the seed amongst the thorns, and here's the word. Okay, here, more types, more symbolism. The cares of this world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful. Because here when we read of thorns, this is a reference to action. It's not just thorns in and of itself, but weeds as well. Because what happens when weeds spring up around plants? Particularly ones that are fruit-bearing or ones that bear some type of food. What's the weed doing? I can hear you. Do you know what?
Helping it grow up a little bit.
Well, the weed, what the weed's doing is also competing for the nutrition, the in the ground. It's sucking up all the nutrients in the ground or in whatever you feed it. And it's also choking out the root system of the good plant where it can't do it. Because it'll intermingle with it. It'll come all twined together in some big mess. And if you pull them both, try to pull the weed out, what happens? You'll pull the good plant out with it, won't you? So when the weeds come in, they choke it out. Now remember the weeds. We got something different here. We got common weeds here versus the tares here coming up here, and that's a completely different animal. We'll get to that. It's going to be very interesting. But he who receives the seed on good ground hears the word and understands it, and who indeed bears fruit and produces some 100, some 60, some 30. Remember, now the weeds described here in verse 22, it talks about the cares of this world and the deceitfulness of riches choking off the word. So that's just what the world has to offer, these weeds. But now we're going into these tares. It's not the common weed like we read of here. This is it's something completely different. We'll see that. Another parable he put forth to them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while man slept, his enemy came. We'll go ahead and read it all the way through. Then while man slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. When the wheat had sprouted and produced a crop, then the tares also appeared. So the servants of the owner came and said to him, Sir, did you not sow good seed in this field? Then why does it have tares? He said to them, an enemy has done this. The servant said to him, do you want to go then and gather them up? He said, no, lest while you gather up the tares, you also uproot the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the time of the harvest. And at the time of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, first gather together the tares and bind them into bundles and burn them, but the wheat gather into my barn. We handle these common weeds and these tares differently, don't we? You can remove a common weed, but it's this other weed. You got to handle it completely. You got to handle it differently. I'm going to jump over these next couple of parables here. We'll come back to them if time permits. Because I want to finish this parable of the tares. What time we got left? I want to discuss.
Yeah.
We're going to jump ahead to verse 36.
Curtis.
We'll come back to 31 as time permits. Yes.
Yeah, before you move on, just wanted to kind of specify. Yeshua is explaining how, the weed is similar to him, the tares are totally different. And I look at that as those are the wicked that truly will not ever come to the realization of Messiah and Yahweh. But he also addresses those that are similar to him, but also are not fruitful in John 15:1.
Mm-hmm.
And so reading John, if you read John 15:1 through 8, that is a separate group. That is those that, they receive the seed and it grows, but they are not being fruitful, and he describes what will happen to them as well. So not the ones that are totally opposed to him, but the ones that pretty much look like him. They're the vine that's attached, the branches that are attached to the vine, but they don't really do what they're supposed to do. So I don't know if you have that, but John 15:1 through 8. If you
Okay.
read that.
John 15:1 through 8. Okay. We'll take a moment. We'll do that. I didn't have that in my notes, but we'll read it. First 8 verses of John 15. I am the vine. My Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that bears fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. You are already clean because of the word which I have spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit, for without me you can do nothing. So if we're not abiding in the vine, we're not going to bear fruit. Why? Because we're being choked out by the cares of the world, aren't we? Just like we were told in Matthew 13. If anyone does not abide in me, he is cast out as a branch and is withered. And they gather them and throw them into the fire, and then they are burned. But if you abide in me and my words abide in you, you will ask what you desire, and it shall be done for you. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, so you will be my disciples. Thank you, David. I did not have that in my notes. Thank you. Okay, let's jump ahead back to Matthew 13. We're going to jump ahead to verse 36. Then Joshua sent the multitude away and went into his house. And the disciples came to him, saying, Please explain to us the parable of the tares of the field. At least this time they admit they don't get it. So many times in Scripture, in the Gospels, we read, and these guys think they have it figured out, only to learn, no, they don't either. But this one is, okay, we realize from what happened just a minute ago that, no, we don't either understand. We're going to explain it to us. And he answered them and said to them, He who sows good seed is the Son of Man. That's your ultimate sower. That's the owner of the vineyard, the owner of the field. A lot of typology in this parable as well, and we're going to see it right here. The field is the world. The good seeds are the sons of the kingdom. That's your good seed. The good seeds are the sons of the kingdom. But the tares are the sons of the wicked one. The enemy who has sowed them is... I'm going to read on through this, and then we'll come back and discuss this, okay? I'm going to read this on through. The enemy who sowed them is the devil, and the harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are the angels. Therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of this age. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will gather out his kingdom all things that offend, and those who practice lawlessness. And he will cast them into the furnace of fire. There will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. But the righteous will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear. So all the symbolism found in this parable is explained right here. There's no need to be guessing what any of this is. Because in spite of this explanation, how many of us have heard preachers and other folks just go on guessing, playing a guessing game on what all that means, right? We've all, everyone's heard, okay. Good, so it's not just me then. All of us, okay. We've all heard it to one extent or another. That's good. So any thoughts, any comments about this little passage here concerning the explanation of the tares? Yes, Larry.
Well, of course, all these parables, I believe there are a total of 7 parables in these chapters here, and it's dealing with a sower sowing seed in various types of soil. We know that there are those individuals who hear a portion or a snippet of the good news of the kingdom, they immediately latch on to it, but because of various reasons, maybe because they don't develop their spiritual inquisitiveness to study the scriptures, they dry up and wither away. Or when there's some type of opposition. I really remember a time I studied the scriptures with a young man, and it was a very long scripture, but his wife started to become very opposed to him studying the scriptures, and next thing you know, he wasn't studying, and he was making good progress and changing his life and doing things like this, but because he came up under this type of pressure, he gave up. But yet in these parables about the wheat and the tares, there was a wheat, I believe it was called a darnel, that
Yes.
looked just like a wheat.
That's right.
But it was a weed, and it was poisonous if you ate it. Okay, so there was a situation here as we studied these parables. There would be these tares, these I would call it counterfeit, imitation wheat
That's exactly what it is.
that would be sown at the same time by the same good wheat, because we know the Father and the Son is sowing good wheat. And we know that in the time in which we live, there's a lot of people that call upon the name of, they say God, okay? But they don't keep the Sabbath, they don't keep the holy days, they don't observe the commandments of God, they do not obey it, but yet they claim that they are the servants of God, okay? But truly, they're not serving Elohim. So they're imitation Christians, because they do not have the fruits of what's outlined that a true believer would have as far as scriptural knowledge. They don't call upon the name. They just call upon a generic deity that we know from studying history. These words that they use, Lord and God, are really remnants of the pagan deities that the ancients used to worship. So there's a lot of things, and really what's going to happen is at the end of this system of things, when there is the final harvest, there's going to be a revealing of those who truly serve Yahweh and His Son Yeshua versus those who claim that they did, but by their fruits prove false to its power.
Yeah, Curtis, you can, the verse that actually states that is Second Peter 2, verses 1 and 2.
Go ahead and read it right there.
See if I can see it. 2 Peter 2, 1. But there were false prophets also among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you.
That's right.
Who privily shall bring in damnable heresies, even denying Yahweh that bought them, and bringing upon themselves swift destruction. And many shall follow these pernicious ways, by reason of whom the way of truth shall be evil spoken of. And so they're actually bringing a bad name to Yahweh by doing the things that they're doing that Larry just mentioned, by stating that they do follow, the law, they do call on his name, which is not the appropriate name. All of the things that they're stating that they do, according to him, when in actuality they don't.
Yes, Larry.
And going back to Revelation 18, verses 2, we see a prophetic time where it says, and he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great has fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and the cage of every spirit, unclean and hated bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. But basically at this in verse 4 it says, come out of my people, do not share in their sins. And so we can see as we get to the end of this system of things, there's a warning that's going out that, hey, there are things that are part of this world, the world of churchianity, the world that is part of this Babylon the Great, because they hold on to Babylonian traditions. And what we're told to do is cleanse ourselves and stop those things.
Because let's look at this word for terrors, and it's a Strong's Concordance, the Greek Concordance 22:15 for terrors. It's the Zanian, and it means a darnel or a false grain. Because what's interesting about this darnel, in its younger stages, it looks exactly like good wheat. In its very young stages, you can't. But as it grows, it's only when it grows up, alongside the wheat, do you tell the difference. Because in a good wheat, in the good wheat crops of the field that it will grow alongside of. See, the good ones, they grow up nice, strong, and straight, right? They'll grow up strong and straight in a single file, if you will. But the darnel will grow up and then split. Kind of like a big folding Y. Kind of like that Y you see in the word Yellowstone, you know? How it kind of curls out like that? That's what the darnel will do. And it is in fact, like Larry said, an imitation. I got you a second, Raquel. It is an imitation. And it is poisonous. Because the good wheat will feed you and give you good nourishment and the proper nutrition you need. Whereas the darnel is poisonous. And if you ingest it, yes, it will make you very ill. And depending upon the exact type and the amount, it could kill you. Yes, Raquel.
I just want to add to what you were saying, because in the third definition, the wheat, Zizanian, a kind of darnel resembling wheat, except the grains are black.
That's right, and the grains are black.
The grains are black. I want to share that.
Black. That's very interesting symbolism, isn't it? The symbolism's fascinating. It's got these black little looking grains to it. Because an experienced field hand is going to know this by looking at it, but a new one is not going to know that. And which is why the truth matters in these things, because while the physical darnel will kill you and make you physically ill and give you physical death, what will the spiritual darnel do to you?
Lose your salvation.
That's right. We're talking like, yes, bound up, and if you're full of darnel, you're not going to grow. You're not going to understand the word. People are so happy when they read their Bible sometimes, because we've seen them all, and then they go to this church, well, not necessarily when they read their Bibles, but when they go to this church, that church, some other church, and they're so happy with their worship service and everything, well, they realize it, and they don't realize it, but they're being full of darnel. They're listening to these preachers, these wicked ones, if you will, these false that are kind of tickling their ears. Yes, Tino. I think I stirred something in you. Yes.
Well, I like the verse that's in 2 Corinthians 11:3. Paul writes about. He says, "But I fear by lest any means, as the serpent beguiled Eve."
That's right.
So your mind should be corrupted from the simplicity that's in Messiah. And it is interesting. It also pairs along with this conversation, because that's exactly what it is. It's false. It's a false teaching. It's a false.
That's right. They're false teachings. Let's turn to Revelation, please. Shall we? We know where we're going. We're going to read this anyway. Revelation 2:9. This is about the church in Smyrna. I know your works, your tribulation, your poverty, and you are rich. In their poverty, Father says they are rich. And I know the blasphemy of those who say they are Jews, but they are not, because they are a synagogue of Satan. Imagine that. Let's try jump across the page. Go to Revelation 3:9, please. This is So here we see this Darnell here, those of the synagogue of Satan. There's an amazing parallel. We're going to see this Darnell. Remember, they were planted by the wicked one. They're claiming to be followers of Messiah and to choke out the word, or to be believers, but they're here choking out. But their in fact is to plant more Darnell and grow and choke out the word, kill the word. Let's try Revelation 3:9. Actually, let's read verse 3:1 first. And to the angel of the church in Sardis, write, these things says he who has the 7 spirits and the 7 stars. Yeah, I know your works, and you have a name that you are alive, but you are dead. Be watchful and strengthen the things that remain, that you are ready to die. And I have not found your works perfect before Yahweh. So this stuff can kill you if you ingest this. Revelation 3:9 is actually concerning the church of Philadelphia, of all his blessings. Revelation 3:9, I will indeed make those of the synagogue of Satan who say, now it tells you who they are, who say they are Jews, but they are not, but they lie. Now, if they're lying, now this is not an identity crisis here. It says they lie. They know who they are, but they lie. There's a difference between someone who's actually, is there a real difference between someone who's actually lying versus someone who's honestly don't know and deceived? Because if you're lying, what are you doing if you're lying? Well, you're not telling the truth, but you know better, don't you? Isn't that the implication? These people are wolves putting on sheep's clothing. When a wolf puts on sheep's clothing, we're not talking about a wolf with his modern day identity crisis, like people have today. Now, yeah, I know biology says I'm a man, but I'm really a genderless, space alien from the planet Aloysius, out in deep hole number 9. No, we're not talking about that kind of nonsense. No, these people are. No, a wolf is putting on a sheep's clothes. He's making an effort to put on the clothes of a sheep so he can go inside and have him some mutton. There's Jews and there are not, but they lie. And indeed, I will make them come and worship before your feet, and to know that I have loved you. So these people, in the end, they're not going to win. They will be rejected for who and what they are. John, the 8th chapter, gives an explanation about a lot of these people, because Joshua told them who they were. He made it plain. He said, "No, you're of your father, the devil, and the things you do and seen, you have heard with your father." Makes you wonder what these people were doing behind closed doors when they weren't out, publicly being righteous. I'm sorry, but it just does make you kind of wonder, doesn't it? At least with some of them. Because we read in Acts or in Paul's trials, we learn that, yes, some of them did believe. Did I see a hand go up? I think Larry?
One of the things that we need to remember in these parables that Joshua gave to his disciples and to those who gathered around to hear them is that it wasn't a one-time event of sowing the seed. The sowing of the seed has been going forth from the day of Yeshua until now.
Mm-hmm.
It's continuously being done. It's the preaching of the good news of the kingdom. And really, we sitting here and those listening online, we are part of those seeds. But really, what we will become will be manifested at the harvest, unless you give up early, okay? Because remember, Yeshua pointed out that it is he who has endured to the end that shall be saved. And so we have to endure to the very end. We have to prove ourselves that we cultivated that good soil or that heart condition. We continuously study the scriptures. John 17:3 points out this means everlasting life. They're taking in knowledge. So we have to take in knowledge. We have to apply it in our life. We have to cultivate our lives. We have to make revisions in our life. We have to change our lives so we can bear the fruit that Yeshua said that we had to bear. And so really, this parable that we're studying is an ongoing thing that affects every man, woman, and child on earth today.
Yeah, I went to the library and I did a little homework on that, and I had some stuff printed, and I ran off and forgot it. Because even the modern name for is, I had to look it up real quick, is Vicia satvia, or the common vetch. Like I said, I ran off. I know I ran off with that. I even think I left it at the library. I think I even forgot to pick it up at the library printer because I couldn't find it here. I thought, oh no, well, it's gone now. Oh, well, we're out of time here, so we'll have to close here. And we'll be back at 3 o'clock with David Gibson for the main message.